Begin the current Daf Mesech Yevamos Daf Vav. Begin 9 lines down at the top of the Amud, where the Gemara is in the middle of discussing what would be the source of Asay Deicha Leisei Sheyesh Bekaris. Although we really brought a source for Asay Deicha Leisei, but how would we know Asay Deicha Leisei Sheyesh Bekaris to tell me why I need to have a leha to say that in this Leisei Bekaris of the Rayis that would be us? Just corresponding by Kazakh and Cheskel Tanitam Dav Chavish is zoning for today's Daf. So this is discussed in today's Daf, like we said. Continue the need for the Gzera Shava, where it said V'isha l'chaysu l'sikach litzu l'galas avasa leha b'chayeha, and it says Yevami yabi leha to tell you Gzera Shava, just like there's b'makom mitzvah, the Isra b'chaysisha is even b'makom mitzvah, Yibam to exempt Yibam of all Isuri erva. Asa sebedachalois to say the concept of a positive commandment overriding negative prohibition. Havara, the reason why the Torah mentions specifically loisavaresh b'chomesh azechem, a distinct of all the Lamites Malachas, uniquely it's mentioned that of the Isra of lighting a fire. Either Lalav Yatzas, it was mentioned to tell you that it's actually not going to have cars, only going to have a negative prohibition, or Lachalik Yatzas, actually was mentioned to tell you that there's an individual liability for each Malacha on its own. So, on the previous Daf, we had mentioned, can we find the source for Asay Deicha Leisei Bekaris regarding that of an Erva? Because we found a regular Leisei. How about that of Karis? Which, again, that would explain the need for the Gzera Shava Aleha, because like we said on Daf Gimel. So, the Gemara attempted to bring a raya from Kibbut Aveim, Ish imebab tiro, but beshab seisidish meiru. So he said that, it's not referring to lav the mechamer, which would only be a lav, and not karis, because if that would be the case, we said then this that we know the rule is asay is doich leisei. You should learn that from here. That's not doich even the regular leisei mechamer. So why do we say that asay is doich leisei? So we can't say that, even though it's, let's say, a regular lab, it's shani lab, Shabbos to mechamiri, because we don't make such a distinction like we said. When the father says, I want you to become tamei, or don't return the Aveda, we bring from the source of this pasuk of ish imivav terav shabseiset tishmeiru that kuchem chayim mechvaydi. So we don't differentiate. So again, why would we not learn out then that asay cannot be deichiv in the regular lois asay? Obviously, it's talking about a chiv of karas. So it's a chiv of karas. So then what's the pshat? That why don't you learn that from over here? Say Deicha Leisei Bekaris. That we said because you can't hechsha mitzvah, because again Machlekes Rashi and Tais, but the way Rashi said it was because the only way of fulfilling the mitzvah is by the cooking. But here by Yibam, it's not the only way. You could also do chalitza, and therefore that wouldn't tell us that I would have thought that you could do Yibam to need a leha to tell me that I cannot. So the rather says the Gemara, and this is where our Gemara continues. That you would have thought to say, learn that from the building of the Beis Hamikdash. That we'll learn out this concept of Asay Deicha Leisei Bekaris. Why? At the time, like we learned a brisa. You would think the building of the Beis Hamikdash is such an important mitzvah that would override the malacha of Shabbos. Tamalon, as the pasuk teaches, as Shabseisu Tishmeiru, safeguard my Shabbos, umikdash tiro, and from my temple you should be afraid. What's it showing? Kulchem chayav mechvaydi. That you're all obligated in my honor, meaning even though there's an obligation of building the Beis Hamikdash, but that does not override the mitzvah of Shabbos. Says the Gemara, my love isn't it talking about building and demolishing? Meaning when we talk about the Beis Hamikdash of Mikdash Tiro, is that what we're telling you that you have to say it's forbidden is even building or demolishing, even though those are av malachas, they're 2 out of 30 malachas, and the punishment of kares. So it sounds like the time of the Chazal V'Chman says it's only because the pasuk says, but be careful, don't violate Shabbos, halav hachi. But if not for the pasuk, dachi. If I didn't tell you that you cannot, I would have thought to say that asay of asuli mikdash overrides the law of Shabbos as karas. Great source. You see that in general, if I don't have a pasuk otherwise, asay would be deicha leisei bekaris. Says no. It's talking about lav the machamer. When we're talking about that you cannot do a malacha in the construction of the Beis Hamikdash on Shabbos, it means just a regular lav, not a mechamer. So the Gemara goes through the same questioning it had regarding Kibbut Aveim. But still, you cannot be deicha the building of Beis Hamikdash, ba'aslu mikdash, which the mitzvah say to even just do mechamer on Shabbos. But this, that we know in general the rule is just asay b'deicha leisei, a positive commandment comes ahead and overrides negative prohibition. What do you mean? We should learn that from over here that it's not going to be deicha even a lav of mechamer. So why do we always say Asay Deicha Leisei? Says the Gemara, and Bechita, we're going to say again the same shmuz. Shani Labed the Shabbos Chamiri. No. On Shabbos, you're right. An Asay of Asli Mikdash cannot override even just a regular negative prohibition on Mechamer, because Shabbos is very chomer. Its lavin is very severe. But in general, I would say Asay Dechel. Say, no, you cannot say this. Because Vatana Ba'amakoi, we have a Tana in general learns out the negative prohibition of Tumah and of not returning a lost object from the law of Shabbos. Obviously, the law of Shabbos is not more severe. And because of Lekha Baruch, and they don't ask that, it's different how you're learning out. The time they learn the Brisa. Yachal Amalei of Hitama. You would think if a father tells him, I want you to go into that cemetery and get me something, even though it's a kind, to become tummy. Or he tells him, no, don't return this object, we're very busy now. You would think that he should listen to him. It says, yes, fear your parents, etc. But it says, in that same pasuk about keeping Shabbos, which teaches you're all obligated in my honor. So you see that we're learning out other lavim from the lav of Shabbos. So Shabbos is not mochamer. So we're back to the question. If Shabbos is not mochamer, and you see that the pasuk is telling you that you cannot build a Beis Hamikdash even though all you're doing is the regular lav of mechamer, so then you should learn out. Asay cannot be derech say even she'im b'kars. So says the Gemara, no, obviously it has to be talking about sheyesh b'karas, and if it is talking about sheyesh b'karas, that's why we're not learning out that Asay is not derech it's only not derech sheyesh b'karas. So then we're back to the question. If it's talking about sheyesh b'karas, then that should be a good source for the halacha of Asay generally being derech sheyesh b'karas, and maybe that's why I need a leha. So the Gemara, no, I'll tell you why you cannot learn out from there. And because you can refute it by saying Malahanach, building Beis Hamikdash, shekin hechsher mitzvah. The only way to build the Beis Hamikdash is by violating the negative prohibition about baina on Shabbos. But the mitzvah of Yibum, you could do chalitza. Again, that's where Rashi translates the sugya. So it's not hechsher mitzvah. So why would I need a leha? Because I would have thought that Bita, your own daughter, you could do Yibum with her. Why would I have thought so? I say derech lisesh b'karas, but it's not hechsher. It's not the only way. I could do chalitza by the building Beis Hamikdash. Yeah, I would have thought so. That you could build it mamish be oiva and leisish because that's the only way. But here it's not. So says the Gemara, wait a second. But hechsher mitzvah, if that's what this is teaching me in this pasuk, typically mahasam. But you already know this from the previous drasha we brought from Ishim above Tiro, that which is also hechsher mitzvah is not deicha. Why would I have to repeat it again over here by Shabsayset Shemar regarding the Beis Hamikdash? Rather, isn't it that you should learn out from there that even when it's not hechsher mitzvah, if a pasuk would not explicitly come ahead and say it's not deicha, I would say that it is deicha. Oh, so that's why I need a leha. So why are you saying that's not a good source? Seemingly, this is a good source because why do I need two psukim saying the same idea of hechsher mitzvah? Obviously, even when it's not hechsher mitzvah, like the case of Yibum with an erva. Says the Gemara, no. And the Chanami, you have a good point. Now, why would I have to say two times the same idea for hechsher mitzvah, but that's not what it's teaching, and if you cannot learn out from it, because what do you need it for? I mean, you're right. You're pointing out. You're saying, hey, hazach too. You're telling me that it's over there. You would have thought asay derech b'karas, but it's only because it's hechsher mitzvah. But why do I need the pasuk to teach it two times? I already know it from the pasuk of kibbut abayim that you don't listen, even though you would say asay derech b'karas. Why do you need to say it again by the Beis Hamikdash? Shmuel says, you're right. I'm not learning out from over here that because I would have thought asay derech b'karas. I'm actually learning out something else from the smichas of psukim. And if you don't have a source to tell me that the fact that it says it two times, it's coming to teach me, even when it's not hechsher mitzvah. What's it teaching me? I need it for a different drasha. Like it's time like learn the brisa. You would think that a person would be afraid of the actual structure of the Beis Hamikdash itself. That's what the pasuk teaches. No, it's comparing honoring Shabbos to honoring the Beis Hamikdash. It says about safeguarding the Shabbos. It talks about being afraid of the Beis Hamikdash. So the pasuk is comparing them in the same pasuk to teach you. Just like when you keep Shabbos, as you continue to the base. When is Shabbos at the I'm not afraid of Shabbos itself. It doesn't say Moira on Shabbos. It only says Shmira Shabbos. Who are you afraid of? The one who gives you the warning on Shabbos. That's referring to Hashem. So too, then even when it talks about fearing of the mikdash, that's the pasuk coming to teach you. You're not afraid of the temple itself. Rather, it's from the one who gave the warning regarding the Beis Hamikdash. That's what the pasuk is coming to teach you, and therefore we don't have it as a source, as the Gemara attempted to bring it to show that because you would have thought asay derech lisesh b'karas, it's not what the pasuk teach you. It's even something else. Now, once we're discussing this, says the Gemara, what is a way of showing fear of the Beis Hamikdash, which is really of Hashem. So a person should not enter the Temple Mount b'maklei with his stick, b'menole with his shoes, b'padase, which is his money belt, u'ba'avak shal gabiraglo, with the dust on his feet. You shouldn't make it a shortcut that you don't have to go all the way around. You just go in one way and go out the other. Meaning, if you're not doing it for the purpose of avoid, you're just doing your own personal needs. And for sure, from a kavachema, that one should not be spitting on the Har Bayis, which the Gemara Brachas on Daf Yomi explains something very timely, a pasuk from the Megillah Esther, Ki ein lovei al shar hamelech b'vushsak, because one does not come into the king's gate with a sackcloth, which it's not even disgusting. For sure, spitting, which is disgusting, for sure you should not come a shar hamelech in front of a Kadosh Baruch Hu. So those are things that one should not be doing. Now, I would only know at the time when the Beis HaMikdash is around. How do you know that these halachas all apply even in today's days when there's no Beis HaMikdash? That's what that pasuk teaches. Again, it compares compares keeping Shabbos to being afraid of the Beis HaMikdash. Just like keeping Shabbos is forever, so too the fear that applies to Beis HaMikdash is also forever. So again, that's the drasha of their smichos. And again, it's not extra to teach you that I would have thought to say even that's not a hechsher mitzvah. So we're back to the question: where do we know this from? That that I would have thought that you would do yibam for the erva, that I need allowed to say that you don't. Zela rather says the Gemara as follows: something that you would have thought to say teisim havar, that you would learn it out from the isser in the Torah of kindling a fire. What's this talk about? Tan Rabbi Shmuel. It's taught in the Brayse Shivi B'Shmuel, and at the end we'll see what it's referring to. It says in the pasuk in the Torah, "L'savaru eish b'chol ma'asher." You should not burn a fire in all your settlements. Now, what's it teaching? What do you mean? It already says l'sasakam malacha, which we know it's lamates malachas because it compares it to the building of the Mishkan, which had these 39 malachas. So, what are you picking out specifically over here? L'savaru, about havara. So Gemara says, wait, matam, that's what Rabbi Shmuel is asking? What's it teaching? What do you mean? That we know is a well-known discussion. Either Rabbi Yossi, if it's going like Rabbi Yossi, it's lalav. It's what's called a lav yitzasa. It's coming to tell you that you're not going to be chayiv kars and skila on this one of the lamates malachas of havara. It's only made regular negative prohibition. And either Rabbi Nasan lachalik. And if it's like Rabbi Nasan, he holds that it's to divide, meaning that you shouldn't say that one is not going to be chayiv skila until he's mechal Shabbos with all the malachas. Therefore, one of the 39 was singled out, that of Havara, to be mechalik, to tell you that just like Havara is distinct, that's Amalach and Yechayiv Kars and Skila on it independently, so too every Amalach you'd be chayiv independently, like learn the Brisa, that this is the machlekes. Havara, kindling a fire, Lalav Yitzasa de Rabbi Yossi. Yossi holds it was singled out to tell you that it's not going to be like a regular malacha, it's only going to be that of a lav, not of Kars. Nasnami says no, lachalik is to divide, to say that each one has its own separate liability. So what's Tan Rabbi Shmuel's question? So Rabbi said to answer, he says no. The Rabbi Shmuel, Meishavas kakashli. His question wasn't why was Havar singled out. That's a well-known shmuz regarding Rabbi Nasan and Rabbi Yossi. His question was on the word Meishvei Seichem, because Meishavas Matamalamu. What does Meishavas coming to teach? Meishavas essentially means your settlements. It means wherever the Jewish people are, even out of Eretz Yisrael. So his question was, why do I need a pasuk to say Meishvei Seichem? Mechti, let's see. Shabbos Chebes Agufi. Shabbos is something dependent on the person. It's not something that depends on the property, on the ground, like Klayim and Orla and Trumas and Maisus. Those things are agriculture. So those are only in Eretz Yisrael. But B'chayvus Aguf, something dependent on the person's body, like Tefillin, let's say, or Shabbos, Neheges Ben Be'etz Ben B'chutzlotz, that's everywhere, Eretz Yisrael Chutzlotz. So my Shabbos because of the Shabbos Lamali. So that was his question. Why is it saying my Shabbos by Shabbos? What's it coming to teach us? That's what the Brisa says. So Mishum Bishmol, I'm a Tamalech. So in the name Bishmol, one student said, I'll tell you what. It says the pasuk in Devarim in a different context. It says V'chiyeh be'ishchet. If it's going to be in the person of sin, Mishpat Mavis, a judgment of death. V'humas, so he's going to be put to death. Now Shemani, I would understand from this pasuk, Bein B'chol Bein Shabbos, that the person is going to get executed on Shabbos or a weekday. Man, then what do I fill the pasuk in Shabbos and Shemayis? Machalem Mois Yumas. Whoever desecrates the Shabbos is going to surely die. Now, executing someone is Chil Shabbos. No, that would be B'shar Malachas. That's for other Malachas. Chutz Misbesen. The execution of the court is allowed to be done on Shabbos. Or maybe, and the Gemara is going to explain later on what's this back and forth. No, maybe I feel a Misbesen. maybe even execution from the court is forbidden to be done on Shabbos. Now, Aman Mekayim Bahuma, so how do I fill the pasuk that says that the person that's supposed to be executed is going to be executed? That's only B'chol V'lei B'Shabbos, it's only on the weekday, not on Shabbos. And then the Brisa goes back again, like flip-flopping, so to speak. Or maybe, no, maybe it is even on Shabbos that will execute. So it starts with saying, maybe like execute on Shabbos. I said, no, maybe not. Or maybe yes. And again, we'll explain later on why the Brisa does this. That's on the later daf. But Tamalem, that's the pasuk to teach. I'm telling you why it says the word Meishavas. That was the question. He said, I'll tell you what. The Torah tells you not to make a fire in all your Meishavas. Now, Lahal No'emer, there's a pasuk in Bamidbar where it talks about Mrs. Bezin in the parsha of Reitzchem, of murderers, that you have to execute him. And what does it say over there? It says, V'hayu eila lechem, this should be for you, l'chukas mishpat, for a statute of judgment, l'derisechem, for your generations, b'chol ma'ishvaisechem, in all your settlements. So the same word that it mentions regarding the Isra of making a fire, b'chol ma'ishvaisechem, it uses the same word ma'ishvaisechem when the court's execution. What's it teaching you? Ma ma'ishavas amurim lahalan, just like when it says ma'ishavas over there in that pasuk, is bebezdin, because that's what we're talking about the court should execute the person. Af ma'ishavas amurim kam. So when it says over here that you should not make a fire, b'chol ma'ishvaisechem, is also bebezdin. And the Amar Rahman is telling you, Lo Savaru, don't make the fire. So it's telling you explicitly with the word B'chol Ma'ishvaisechem not to execute on Shabbos. Now, my love, isn't it that the Brisa is Reb Nosni? The Amar that he says, L'chalak Yitzasa, he says that Havara is a Av Malacha. It's punishable by cars. So why the Torah mentions separately Havara? It's just to tell you that each Av Malacha has its own separate liability. And what do you see? But the time of the reason is because the Torah says Lo Savaru. Halavachi, again, all these proofs that the Gemara is bringing are all in the Havaminas, like in what you would have thought. Halavachi, if I didn't tell you that you cannot, I would have thought to say the Dachi, that the mitzvah say of a humas, of executing a murderer, would be Deicha, the lav of Havara, which has chorus. So you see from here, I say the Chalesish because, and that's why I need a leha to tell you that you won't do that for the mitzvah yibam, for the erva, because you see that I needed a pasuk to tell you that you're not going to do havara in execution. Says Gemara, Allah, no, it's not a right. It's Rabbi Yasi. The Brisa, Rabbi Shloimy is going like Rabbi Yasi, who holds havara is only a lav. That's why I would have thought that you would be deicha. And the pasuk is telling you not, but you don't see any source of Chalesish because according to Rabbi Yasi, the lav of havara is only a lav and not sheish b'kars. Says the Gemara, wait a second, it's still not a good reputation. For Tavanam Rabbi Yasi, let it be like Rabbi Yasi. But Aimanam Rabbi Yasi, what do we find Rabbi Yasi that he says Havar l'lav yitzasa, that the negative prohibition of lighting a fire, that's only a negative prohibition, not karas, that's Havar gredasa, that's only when you're kindling a fire. But Havar de bezin, when the bezin is making a fire to execute the murderer, bishul psiluhu, they're cooking a wick of metal, which they melted down. And actually, many people don't know this. When we have the misa of sreifa, you don't actually burn the person in a fire. A person, what they do is they take molten lead and they pour it down the person's mouth. It goes into their intestines and burns up their whole inside. V'amar Shesha said, which is actually very important halacha, and the halacha is a bishul. Many places can quote this Gemara. Mali bishul psila, mali bishul samanim. What's the difference about cooking a molten a metal wick or about some type of dyes? Cooking the wick, which is metal, is av malacha, because we learn it from the Mishkan, and cooking the dyes that they had in the Mishkan to dye tchelis and talashani is the same thing as cooking metal. It's changing it from a solid to a liquid, and therefore there's also the bishul that the courts were doing, and that's all they say shish b'karis. And you tell me if I didn't have the pasuk of l'savaresh b'chol moishvei seichem, which includes the Meishavas Abazin, I would have thought that the court would not just make havara, they would also do bishul. That's a loisish b'karas. So you see, says loisish b'karas. So the Gemara rejects that too. Amar Rabbi Shloimy Schwartzberg says no. Hi Tana, this Tana that required a pasuk to tell me that you're not allowed to do misas besdin, you're not doing execution on Shabbos. Loi mishum, it's not because if I didn't tell you, I would have thought to say you would override because the reason of the Asa say to say that a positive commandment can override negative prohibition that has karas. No, I wouldn't be coming from there. That's not the Havamina. El Mishum the Maisi le Mekabel Chaimer. He would have known it from Mekabel Chaimer that's Deicha Shabbos. Which is, again, it's a lot of cheshbon over here in these sugyas. But the whole raya is from the Havamina. Why do I need a pasuk? Oh, I would have thought. Oh, I would have thought what? Oh, I said the because. No, it's not what I would have thought. I would have thought that you would execute the person for a kal v'chomer, and if I don't have a source that I would have because of a aseder because. And this is what the Bryce is saying regarding burning someone in court, executing him on Shabbos. The Bryce has said, "Man mekayim, how am I fulfilling mechalem leisumas?" That those who desecrate Shabbos by cooking and firing and all these things, they're gonna be dying for that. That's b'shar malachas chutz misid bezin. That's for all other malachas, except for the court's execution. Of misid bezin dachas Shabbos, but the execution of a court with dachas Shabbos, not because of asay derech because, but mekabel chaymer. With what's a kabel chaymer? So we continue to have a b'zayim and aleph. Kabel chaymer is as follows. It's a little bit of a cheshbon, but not such a difficult one. Uma avodah. If doing the avodah in the Beis Hamikdash, shichamur, it's very severe. It's a very stringent mitzvah because it's v'deicha Shabbos. We know that we bring the karbanos on Shabbos. We do malachas in the Beis Hamikdash, so it's deicha Shabbos. Yet ritzicha deicha aisa. The halacha is if the kohen was a murderer and he wanted to do the avodah, the court sends agents and they bring him to execute him, unless he was on the roof, meaning on the top of the mizbeach already, and he was doing the avodah in his hand. That you wouldn't. But if he's on his way, you say you pull him by and you say, "Let's go." Like it says in the pasuk in Shmos, from my with my altar, you take him to be executed. Not from al mizbechit, from in mizbechit. But you see that ritzicha is deicha the avodah. Oh, so Shabbos should nitzchas mnei avodah. So if Shabbos, which gets pushed away, is overridden from the obligation of doing the avodah, in addition to ritzicha deicha isa, isn't it a kal v'chomer that executing the murderer, doing the sreif in the bezdin, is going to be deicha Shabbos? So that's the kal v'chomer that I would have thought that you could execute on Shabbos, and that's why you need Moshe Seichem to tell me that no, you cannot execute on Shabbos, but not because I would have thought that the asay of a humas is deicha delay, which is the court's executing a murderer, is deicha delay because of Shabbos. Not from that. I would have thought it's based on a kal v'chomer if avodah is deicha Shabbos and ritzich is deicha avodah, so ritzich should surely be deicha Shabbos. That's why I need the pasuk. And again, we have not yet found a source for asay deicha loises bekaras to explain to us why did we need a leha to tell me that you cannot do yibum with the erva of sheyesh bekaras and of chesisha meat and all these other ones. What do I need a pasuk for? Who would have thought that you could do asay deicha loises because you have not brought me a source? Yes, like this last source is not because I would have thought asay deicha loises because I would have thought because of a kal v'chomer, and that's what you need much of a for. Thank you for any time for hosting us.